Let's just start with an overview of human trafficking, and then we can go deeper into the sex trafficking.
Human trafficking is labor and sex trafficking, force, fraud, or coercion to induce someone to make profit against their will. Sex trafficking, in 2019, Forbes identified it as a $150 billion annual industry.
Can you talk about Baltimore, right here in our own backyard? How bad is it here?
It is so prevalent in our city because of the access to the highways, the casino, the football stadium, the baseball stadium. All of this is just the nexus for why human trafficking can exist in our city. Did you know the Super Bowl is considered one of the highest events for sex trafficking every year? Because of people coming in, people going out, and they can buy sex. And traffickers read the John chat boards like stockbrokers read the Financial Times. They are following the activity, where they can get away with it, where they can't get away with it, what may be happening in the area that would bring attention so that they could make more sales of women and using their bodies over and over again.
Do you have numbers for Baltimore?
The reality is we know it's underreported. And one of the reasons it's underreported is so many women don't know that they're being sex trafficked. And because of that, they don't know to call it in.
This is the kind of work I do, miss. I'm just a victim of my own circumstance.
Why do these women not realize that they're being sex trafficked? What do they think it is? They think they're willingly staying on these corners?
There's a lot of, as we mentioned, force, fraud, or coercion. What we see most often is women being groomed by men who present as their boyfriends. And then before you know it, he is turning her out to have sex with multiple people at night, multiple men at night. And you can't just break away. Even if it's not a physical force that's moving her around all the time, she says no. That is where some drama will come, and then she'll feel that guilt, and he'll call her names, and she goes and does it. Before she knows it, she is doing this every day, multiple times a day for his profit. And that is, you don't even know it, because at this point, the violence has occurred. He is calling her the most derogatory names, telling her that she wants to be selling her body, and that no one's ever gonna love her because of what she's chosen to do. And so then you're stuck in it, and then you start to believe it. It's part of breaking a person down who's often already in a vulnerable situation. I know for myself that at 20 years old, I was selling my body. I went to the bank, my bank account was overdrawn. I had learned that to use my sexuality to get what I wanted already because of my own trauma history. And I came back, I told my neighbor, and I was crying, and she suggested that I sex work, and then I started selling my body. And because it was 2001, we picked up a phone book, and we started making phone calls. And the woman I ended up working for, only in the last 19 years later, did I come to learn that the woman I worked for, the DC Madam, would qualify as a sex trafficker through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. There were times in the duration in which I worked for her that I would want to stop, but she had already started her own grooming process. She would talk to me as I would tell her that no one loved me, I had no family, I was on my own, and she would tell me that she was there for me. When I would want to quit, she would tell me that the little bit of money, I remember this one specifically, that the $400 I had rolled up in my sock drawer wasn't going to last me long. And I believed her because I was too scared to go back on my own. But she was making profit off my body. And that's why it's so difficult to look at women on the street and wonder if they're actually being victimized. Because as much as we want to solve the issue, we want to address the issue, we want the fast answers, we're not ready to have the difficult conversations that often lead to the vulnerabilities of women that end up being sex trafficked. Living in poverty, housing unstable, all of these issues lead an individual to being sex trafficked. It doesn't mean it always happens, but the rates go up because she is living in survival and she is desperate.
How did you get out of it though? Initially, how did you get out of her keep on persuading you, I'm here for you, it's okay, you can only rely on me?
All of her conditioning was done through fraud and coercion. I was a heavy drug addict, alcoholic. I was smoking crack, putting a lot up my nose every day. Because of her business structure not being in the same location as me, my drug use made it difficult to keep track of me. That's often not what occurs in especially a sex trafficking ring. There's a woman who's often called the bottom, and the bottom watches the group, and she's also being trafficked. She gets the most privileges and the most attention, but she's also the one that gets the most beatings because she is in charge of keeping all the other girls in line. that did not exist in the structure that Deborah Jean Palfrey, the DC Madam, used. So I was able to get away differently. By this point, I had new people, a supportive community, like what we provided HER Resiliency Center, that was showing me a different way of life. We want to bring that community, and we do bring that community to women we serve at HER Resiliency Center, whether it's our Friday lunches for women we engage during street outreach that week in certain neighborhoods, or if it's our workshops that we have at HER on Thursdays. We are about building community because that is what actually can help the trajectory of someone's life. A large factor of someone's resilience is based on their community.
So how is it that HER Resiliency works different than other organizations who help those who are being sex trafficked?
We approach it because we're helping the whole woman. That's a big difference. It seems easy, but and it goes back to asking her, what are her highest needs? What are the gaps that she's experiencing that are keeping her in survival? So if we know that she can't work because she doesn't have childcare, we're helping her get a childcare voucher so she can go to work. We're wanting to remove what she's getting from a relationship or a dynamic of sex trafficking so that she starts to recognize herself what is occurring and that she doesn't have as much choice as she thought, versus us telling her she's being sex trafficked, because that can create a break in psyche where someone will have a hard time showing up in their own lives because they've just realized they don't have any power. And that's a scary place to be. And that is why when someone actually says, I've been sex trafficked, you have given up your power in this role of victimization, and no one really wants that. So no one makes this stuff up. It's also why it's so hard to get them to realize it. Not every sex trafficker operates the same, doesn't run their business structure the same. They've learned how to get away with it. So they are responding to society. So if they can run the structure differently, they will. But that means that their bonding, their abuse level, all of it's different. Abusers don't give someone a schedule at which they're going to abuse someone. And so it still impacts her because she is wondering at all times, am I going to get beaten? Am I not going to get beaten? Is he going to love me today? Is he going to tell me something good about myself, or is he going to break me down all day long? The women on the streets, what we do is we just start to build those relationships. Ask them every day when we see them, make eye contact. How are you doing today? A sign of someone being sex trafficked is that they won't make eye contact. And that's part of the conditioning of the culture in sex trafficking. We, though, continue to show up. We continue to talk. We had one woman that we helped get into treatment who had been beaten black and blue from top to bottom, used some sort of crowbar against her neck to strangle her. And we took her to treatment. I think it was like she had moved on to the aftercare program, and she went back. And she went back to life because it's what was familiar. And so that when they're calling human trafficking domestic violence on steroids, it's because there's a number of times you'll go back before you're actually able to break free psychologically. And even for myself, I called the DC Madam 4 years later. So in 2001, I worked for her. In 2005, I was calling her again. And I know now of what had occurred, but still I saw her as a viable solution. And that's not unlike what we see with the women we serve at HER.
When you go out though, how do you find these women who are being sex trafficked?
We talk to the women we meet on the streets. We don't know if she's being sex trafficked or not until we talk with her. So we put on our tennis shoes, our sneakers, we put on a HER backpack, we grab some engagement tools, and we go out and we start talking and making eye contact and saying hello to them by their name if we know their name, and being ready and prepared for whatever that they bring to the conversation that day. And if they say we're ready for something different, or they saw something or they had some realization, we're ready to go.
When you're walking these streets and you approach these women, how do you make them feel comfortable with you? You're a stranger walking up to them.
We walk up, we say hello. I always carry a postcard in my hand so that no matter who I'm talking to, whether it's a woman or a man, business owner, old lady, whoever it is, like we're with HER Resiliency Center. We're out here, we serve women in the community, and we go into what we do. And when they stop to talk with us, we will ask, well, do you need anything today? We have our safety packs, which have condoms and tampons in them. And then we have our hygiene packs that have travel-sized toiletries. And we use these to bridge the conversation between stranger and person wanting to have that conversation. We also carry snacks in our backpacks, water if it's hot.
So you got into starting HER because of what you went through.
Many of the experiences the women we serve, from poverty to child abuse, are aligned with my own experiences. And even my drug use. I've been clean 22 years. I was given community in the program where I got clean and sober, and I wanted to give that to other women. Pretending like it doesn't exist or thinking somebody else is going to do it is not going to help address the issue.
How would you portray it, having the conversations with people that may be going through this?
To ask them about themselves. Have a curiosity, an attitude of curiosity, what's going on. Because if you are already suspecting that, there's a good chance it's happening. They're just looking for someone to talk to about it. Or they don't know that they're ready for it, but they will be ready for it.